Hello and welcome to MR.Game Review Show. Don't forget to subscribe the channel, hit the like button and put a comment below the video. Thank you so much. Rival Turf is a beat-em-up game released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System SNES in 1992. Developed by Jaleco, it's part of the Rushing Beat series, though this game is better known for being an early attempt to bring the popular arcade brawler experience to home consoles. Rival Turf follows the classic beat-em-up formula where players take on waves of enemies as they progress through various stages. You can choose between two characters, Jack Flack, a street-smart fighter, and Uzi Nelson, a cop with a more powerful but slower fighting style. The gameplay consists of walking left or right across levels while defeating groups of enemies using a mix of punches, kicks, and special moves. Visually, Rival Turf is a mixed bag. The character sprites are somewhat bland and lack the personality seen in other games of the genre like Final Fight or Streets of Rage. Backgrounds are basic but serve their purpose. The music is serviceable with a few catchy tracks, but it doesn't leave a lasting impression. Sound effects are minimalistic, lacking the punch and impact that make attacks feel satisfying. The controls are straightforward, with basic attacks mapped to the buttons, but the game suffers from somewhat clunky hit detection and a limited move set. This makes the combat feel repetitive after a short time, as there isn't much variety in the enemies or the strategies needed to defeat them. One of the game's redeeming features is its two-player co-op mode, which allows you to team up with a friend. This adds some replayability and enjoyment, as many beat-em-up games are more fun when played with others. When Rival Turf was released, it was met with mediocre reviews. It was criticized for being a rather generic entry in the beat-em-up genre, especially when compared to its more refined contemporaries. While it offered a decent multiplayer experience, it lacked the polish, character design, and gameplay variety that made other beat-em-ups memorable. Over time, the game has largely faded into obscurity, remembered mainly by retro gaming enthusiasts or those with a specific interest in the SNES library. Rival Turf is an average beat-em-up game that may appeal to fans of the genre or those with nostalgia for early 90s gaming, but it doesn't stand out as a must-play title on the SNES. Its clunky gameplay, uninspired visuals, and repetitive action prevent it from reaching the heights of other beat-em-up classics. If you're looking to experience the best of what the genre has to offer, you might want to look elsewhere. The game designer for Rival Turf was Makoto Kikuchi. He worked on the game while at Jaleco, the company that developed and published the title. Kikuchi was involved in the design of various other games during his time at Jaleco, but Rival Turf is one of the more notable titles associated with his work. In Japan, Rival Turf was originally released under the title Rushing Beat. The reception among Japanese gamers was mixed. While it wasn't a major hit, it did find a moderate audience, mainly due to the popularity of beat-em-up games during the early 1990s. Japanese gamers appreciated certain aspects of Rushing Beat, such as its co-op gameplay and the straightforward beat-em-up mechanics. However, the game was often seen as inferior to its competitors, such as Capcom's Final Fight and Sega's Streets of Rage bare knuckle in Japan. The relatively generic character designs and repetitive gameplay were points of criticism. Overall, while Rushing Beat wasn't a huge success, it performed well enough to warrant sequels. Rushing Beat Ran and Rushing Beat Shura, which were also released on the Super Famicom, the Japanese version of the SNES. These sequels made some improvements and refined the formula, and they generally received better receptions than the original game. Rival Turf achieved moderate success in the United States, but it wasn't particularly popular compared to other beat-em-up games of the era. While it did garner some attention due to the popularity of the genre and the appeal of two-player co-op gameplay, it struggled to stand out among stronger titles like Final Fight and Streets of Rage. The game was marketed in the US with a more edgy and aggressive advertising campaign, including the tagline Tough Turf, Tougher Buddies, and a cover featuring two tough-looking guys, one of whom wore a varsity jacket to appeal to American youth. However, the actual gameplay didn't live up to the hype created by its marketing. Critics and players in the US found the game to be somewhat generic and lacking the polish and excitement of its more popular competitors. While it wasn't a complete failure, Rival Turf quickly became overshadowed by other titles in the crowded beat-em-up genre. It did well enough to justify the release of its sequels, Brawl Brothers ** and ** The Peacekeepers ** in the US. But overall, Rival Turf * remained a middle-of-the-road title, remembered mostly by retro gaming enthusiasts rather than being a standout hit. Rival Turf is generally considered to be of moderate difficulty, typical of many beat-em-up games from the early 90s. The game's difficulty is balanced enough to offer a challenge, but it's not overly punishing or frustrating. Factors contributing to difficulty. 1. Enemy variety. The game features a variety of enemies, but their attack patterns are fairly predictable. As you progress, the number of enemies on screen increases, and some enemies become tougher, which can add to the challenge. 2. Limited moveset. The characters have a relatively basic moveset, which can make the gameplay feel repetitive. Because of this, players might find it challenging to deal with large groups of enemies or bosses without taking damage, as the options for combat are somewhat limited. 3. Boss fights. The bosses are generally more difficult than the regular enemies, requiring more strategy and timing to defeat. However, they aren't overwhelmingly difficult, and players familiar with beat-em-ups will likely find them manageable. 4. Health and lives. Like many games of its kind, Rival Turf gives players a limited number of lives and continues. Losing all lives means starting over from the beginning, which can add pressure, especially in later stages where the difficulty ramps up. 5. Co-op mode. The game becomes significantly easier when played into player mode. Having a second player helps manage enemy crowds and can make the game more enjoyable and less frustrating. While Rival Turf is not considered one of the more difficult games in the beat-em-up genre, it provides a solid challenge, particularly for solo players. The difficulty is well balanced, making it accessible to newcomers while still offering a challenge to more experienced players. The game's simplicity in terms of combat options and enemy AI means that with practice, most players can overcome its challenges without too much frustration. The soundtrack for Rival Turf, known as Rushing Beat in Japan, was composed by Atsuyoshi Isemura, who was a relatively lesser-known composer in the video game industry at the time. The music in the game reflects the typical style of early 90s beat-em-up games, with an emphasis on energetic, up-tempo tracks designed to keep players engaged during the action. Energetic beats. The music in Rival Turf features fast-paced rhythms and driving beats, which are common in the beat-em-up genre. These tracks are designed to create a sense of urgency and excitement as players move through levels and fight waves of enemies. Simple melodies. The melodies are straightforward and somewhat repetitive, which suits the game's action-oriented nature but doesn't necessarily stand out in the broader landscape of video game music from that era. The tracks are memorable enough to be recognized by those who played the game but lack the depth or complexity of soundtracks from more iconic titles.